But Daredevil has nothing on these two. We've got Return of the Jedi and Lord of the Rings Fellowship in the Rings in this week's Content Championship Grand Final. This
Yes.
bracket has been many, many weeks in the making.
I feel like we said this when we got to the final of the superhero showdown. It
Yeah,
was like weeks of that, and then it was like, oh my god, we're finally at the final. I feel like the same
yeah.
again.
Like, I can hardly even remember doing superhero showdowns.
Yeah.
We've done so many of these now.
Honestly.
But we're here. We finally whittled it down. I'm just going to quickly go through each of our finalists' route to the final.
Okay.
So, Lord of the Rings took on Iron Man 1 in the first round.
Mhm.
Then it took on Daredevil, the Netflix show, in round 2. Then Rogue One in the quarterfinal. And then the Winter Soldier in the semi-final before making its way here. Return of the Jedi. Where are we? Took on Matt Reeves, the Batman, in round 1.
Oh, what a
Yes.
shit, what a film.
Breaking Bad in round 2.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
That's why I got through. Andor in the quarterfinal
Oh,
before Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban in the semi-final. 2 absolute Goliaths that have been tested throughout their entire route to the final. They have not had a single easy matchup, but they always come out just on top.
yeah, they've proved themselves going through this bracket.
As always, we have
Yes.
6 categories to help us make these impossible decisions.
Mhm.
Personal relevance, how well has it aged, rewatchability, story, acting, and cinematography / general visuals.
Mhm.
This is going to be a rough one.
It really is.
For the 2 semi-finals, I went in kind of knowing who was going to win.
Yeah.
I don't have a clue.
I
So,
have.
Corey, would you like to start us off with your personal relevance?
This might be out of like all the categories, I actually think this might be the hardest one for me. Because these 2 films are almost like my 2 starting canon events for nerdom.
They're like Mount Rushmore of nerd films.
Yeah. There's like, it's literally the 2 sides of my nerdom that I love. High fantasy and like sci-fi / cyberpunk like realm. And it's so difficult to pick which one means more to me when you've got the first Lord of the Rings film that kicked it all off, that like you watch and you're like, holy shit, fantasy. And what a great story. And then you've got the end of the Star Wars trilogy that is like, it comes to an end and it's like, holy shit, I love Star Wars.
Yeah.
I can't remember which came first. I feel like I have a stronger memory of watching the Lord of the Rings trilogy because I was introduced to it, I'm pretty sure, by my uncle. Whereas Star Wars was something that it was probably on TV one time and my dad or mum wanted to watch it and I watched along. Where it's a more vague memory of that first watch through. So I have to say, I think I lean more towards like how strong of a memory of Lord of the Rings I have. But like they're both there as like my core nerdum foundation.
Fair enough. I'm going to be honest. This is actually the easiest category for me.
Oh.
Because I've made no secret of the fact high fantasy isn't my go-to genre. It's not.
Fair.
It's not where I live.
Yeah.
And it was only kind of like maybe the second or third time I watched Lord of the Rings that I really, really like fell in love with that world and like got it for the first time.
Yeah.
Like I was like, oh, they're good, well put together films. But like probably the second or third time I watched it, I was like, oh no, I get it. I get the appeal.
Mm.
Return of the Jedi is just, for me, I was a child when I saw it. My dad had seen it in cinema when it first came out. It was space wizards who look goofy as fuck fighting to save the universe, and there was cute teddy bear things helping. At
Fair.
the end of the day, we have made no secret of the fact that I'm basically a functioning anarchist.
Yep.
The Ewoks are the personification of me. Fuck the authority, get the fuck out of my way, let me just run up and down trees and have a great time. While I adore Lord of the Rings and understand all it's done for the nerd genres, for
Yeah.
me, Return of the Jedi is, I love it.
Fair.
It's everything I want. I want to turn up with characters I know
Mm.
in a situation that seems dire and
Mm.
just just watch it unfold. There's so many good moments in that from start to finish. Han being freed, the Sarlacc pit,
Yeah.
fighting Darth Vader and dealing with Palpatine, Darth Vader turning back to the light. The imagery as well, as like I've rewatched Return of the Jedi time and time and time and time again to just see things that I never noticed before and like learn more about it and see it. It's just, I love it so much. It's personal relevance. If you said you can only watch one of these films again for the rest of your life, I'm taking Return of the Jedi.
I don't actually know if I could pick. That's
How well is it aged?
Oh. Both have aged phenomenally. There is a reason they are like both held as like the gods of nerdom almost.
You don't get this deep in the bracket if you haven't aged extremely well.
Yeah,
Let's be honest.
I almost want to say Lord of the Rings has aged slightly better because its fandom's just as strong as Star Wars, but it hasn't had it very recently got additional content. And it, like also you got The Hobbit, but like for the most part, the amount of content Lord of the Rings has had compared to Star Wars, yet the fandoms are both so strong.
Yeah.
I want to lean in towards Lord of the Rings has aged better.
Wrong.
Oh.
Return of the Jedi came out in what year, sorry?
Oh, you're gonna go off pure age.
1983.
Okay.
This film is a masterpiece and people are still watching it. Do you know how few films from the 80s, people from my generation, because you are a different generation to me, millennial head ass. Do you know how many people that are Gen Z can get through a film from the 80s?
Oh, I
It's
mean,
the style of storytelling is just so different.
yeah,
But Star Wars prevails.
true.
I'm
On a pure age base, yeah.
I don't think anything in the history of the world, other than maybe the Bible, has aged as well as the original Star Wars trilogy. And even then, after a couple hundred years, you have break off from Christianity that cause problems.
Yeah, I like at least in just the nerd realm. I don't think there's anything else.
Especially when you consider what Star Wars had to survive. And I don't
Yeah.
mean to be like dramatic, but I'm talking about media here. It had to survive going from film to VHSs to DVDs and then the internet and streaming services.
Mm.
It had to survive going from a Vietnam World War II world into a post 9/11,
Yeah. It's
almost like, I would say the current generation is like the most anti-capitalist a generation has been. So, like, this big change from here till now is such a test of time. Like, yes, you can look at physical time lengths, but I think the amount the world has changed in between for Star
do
Wars
you
to
know,
still be as relevant is
mm,
crazy.
something else that actually also adds to Star Wars as well, I think about it, is like, look at how many times Star Wars is referenced in other films as like a cultural icon. I feel like it happens way more with Star Wars than it does with Lord of the Rings.
Absolutely. Family Guy, and I know we spoke about it
Yeah.
earlier, and that's why it's on my mind. Family Guy's entire basis is Seth MacFarlane's childhood, which was the 80s,
Hmm.
which is why it's so many 80s references.
Yep.
But as much as I adore Lord of the Rings and it is a masterpiece, there is nothing that is so aggressively inspired by
Mm,
Lord of the Rings as Star Wars has aggressively inspired things.
true.
Um, and that is why I think it's
Yeah,
aged better.
I can see that.
This is one of them horrible ones where I'm like, both of these are basically the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
It's like first and second in a 100-person race. I'm not shitting on Lord of the Rings. I adore Lord of the Rings, but Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Rewatchability. This might be one of the most difficult categories for me, I think.
I feel so. This is where, like, because we are at the end and we know how much weight these, like, both are trilogies at their core.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Star Wars is part of a bigger collection as well, but
You
like,
can watch any Star Wars trilogy
as it's, yeah,
internally, though.
part of me wants to say, realistically, it's as simple as is like the first of a trilogy easier to watch, or is the end of a trilogy easier to watch? And my brain's like, well, you're obviously going to rewatch the start of it more often than you're going to rewatch the end of it. Because with
Hmm.
Star Wars, let's be honest, if someone's like, do you want to watch episode 6? You're like, hang on, let's watch the start, let's watch this all the way through. Whereas if someone's like, let's rewatch Lord of the Rings, like, you're already there, you're starting with the first one.
Yeah. I don't know, it's tricky. Because for
But,
me,
well,
not being inherently a high fantasy fan,
yeah,
because we discussed it, and I always feel like a dick when I say this, like I've got some kind of perfect memory. I don't need to rewatch movies as often to remember the main beats and know where
mm-hmm,
I'm at. So rewatching a later film in a series isn't as big a problem for me as it is for some
I get you.
people. Like even Jenna, for instance, like we need to like re-watch the recap of an episode of a show so that she remembers stuff. That's fucking locked in. I'm ready to go. I know what's important. I know what isn't. Um, and because I prefer Star Wars, I think I would find Return of the Jedi easier to rewatch.
I get you.
But then when you talk about them as a trilogy, I'm kind of like, I've got an entire weekend, and my only job is to watch 3 films. Do I choose the Star Wars trilogy or Lord of the Rings trilogy? I think right now I choose the Lord of the Rings trilogy because I'm like, it's been a little bit longer since I've watched any of them. So I'm like, I've got that itch. I'm like, I could go for some orcs and some
So
elves and some magic.
here's another thing to my basis of leaning Lord of the Rings. I tried to watch Lord of the Rings on New Year's Eve, couldn't find it on a streaming service. I didn't go looking for Star Wars, which means I was more likely had Lord of the Rings been there, I would have rewatched it. And it's like, I think I more inherently would want to rewatch the start of Lord of the Rings and then be hooked in for the rest of the trilogy. Whereas if someone like, oh, episode 6 is on, but we're about to put the first Lord of the Rings on, I'll be like, oh, I'll come watch Lord of the Rings. I need to watch the rest first.
Do you know what I think the perfect encapsulation of this problem is?
Go on.
I'm never ever going to tell anyone I don't want to watch Star Wars. I am going to tell someone that I want to watch Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Do you know? Like, someone
Yeah,
puts Star
I get
Wars
what
on,
you're
I'm
meaning.
gonna get trapped in sitting down and watching it. Someone goes, "What do you fancy watching?" I'm much more likely to go for some Lord of the Rings. You know. Um.
Even
Hmm.
if it is the longer watch.
Yeah. And that is the only problem with Lord of the Rings. You're then locked in for an entire weekend, essentially.
Yeah, but that doesn't bother me.
I know I mentioned it a few weeks ago, but I've told Jenna we need to start a spreadsheet
Oh yeah.
of things we want to watch in like our first year of being in our home for like the first time again. I'm like Lord of the Rings trilogy. Obviously, we'll have to rewatch all Harry Potter, all Marvel films.
Mm.
I'm like, but then like Jenna's comfort film is Rapunzel. Sorry, Tangled,
Yeah.
the Disney version of the
Yeah.
Rapunzel story. I understand that even though I'm not as massive a lover of that film, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to watch that on our sofa in our home together because it's creating new memories.
Yeah.
Films and memories. And that's why rewatchability is such an important topic. Story. Now, this is, I think, the easiest category.
Mm. Yeah, I
I adore
agree.
Star Wars. Lord of the Rings has one of the best written stories in the history of nerd.
It's not where I thought you were actually going with this.
Really?
I mean, J.R.R. Tolkien.
Yes. Lord of the Rings has a far better written story.
Oh, I thought you said my
No,
brain did
no.
not process properly then.
Maybe I misspoke. There is a chance. We've both been drinking. We can be fucked there. I
True.
adore Star Wars. Lord of the Rings story is chef's
Yeah.
kiss.
Sorry,
So
yeah.
good.
I thought you said it before. But yeah, no. Lord of the Rings story, like, there is a reason J.R.R. Tolkien is like a renowned storyteller, and his books are held in such a high regard.
Yes.
We love Star Wars. We love the world that is built in Star Wars. We love the visuals and the fact that there's lightsabers and all this cool stuff.
George Lucas's strong point has never been writing, though.
Exactly. The story of Star Wars is kind of a simple one, realistically.
Give me the ability to look George Lucas and J.R.R. Tolkien in a room to come up with a world. Now we're cooking. The visuals and the story we get out of that is just perfect. But
yeah,
I don't think it would be morally feasible for us to say that George Lucas wrote a better story than J.R.R. Tolkien.
No. I don't think. I think we would be. That would be at the end of this podcast.
Yeah.
If we said that. So yeah, Lord of the Rings by far.
Acting.
I feel like this comes back again to, yes, the visuals of Star Wars are amazing. The world and what was built was amazing, but the script is subpar. It's okay.
I think throughout the entire content championship, we've kind of come back to this point of the actors can only do as well as the script.
Mm-hmm.
I think, basing on how well they acted according to the script, these casts are dead equal.
Mm.
But the cast of Lord of the Rings had a better script to work with.
Yeah.
I adore Harrison Ford and Star Wars and Indiana Jones and everything else he did. I adore Carrie Fisher and everything she did. And Mark Hamill. He was my Luke Skywalker. He was my Joker. I adore the cast, top to bottom, left to right, of both of these projects.
Yep.
But the cast of Lord of the Rings had the better project to work on.
And it was a stacked cast as well.
It was so good. That Lord of the Rings cast is, in my opinion, as an ensemble cast, literally only second to Love Actually. I will die on the hill. Love Actually is the greatest ensemble cast of all time.
I mean, we discussed it over Christmas.
Culture.
But yeah, for British culture, like it nailed it with everybody.
So yeah, I think acting just by right has to go to.
Yeah, it's
Lord
just it's part and parcel with the story. Unfortunately, it's just like it goes together.
Cinematography. It's a big one.
This is
both of these films, I believe, have won cinematography at every stage of the bracket because they are gorgeous films. George Lucas and Peter Jackson, as far as we're concerned, are two of the greatest minds in visual effects history.
I have potentially a bold take here that this is actually very easy.
I think you might have a similar take to me here. Is it along the lines of what came first, the chicken or the egg?
Sort of, yes.
Yeah.
Without
Okay, cool. I think we're on the same wavelength here.
It's as simple as without Star Wars and George Lucas and what they did with visual effects and practical effects and what ILM produced on a practical level for filmmaking and the techniques and things they put in place for that film and came up with, you would not have had Weta. You would not have had what George Lucas created, and George Lucas wouldn't have been able to think, I can do this practically.
Peter Jackson.
Peter Jackson. Honestly, shouldn't have had too
Yeah.
many tricks. Uh,
George Lucas walked so Peter Jackson
yes.
could run.
Without the groundwork built by Lucasfilms and ILM, you wouldn't have got. But the Lord of the Rings films wouldn't have been able to be made in the way that they were made.
While they are so comparably similar, I think that is actually what the point is. They look equally as good, but one happened 20 years earlier.
Hmm. There's
Do you know what
like,
it is? It's like that meme of like, look what they need to mimic a fraction of our power.
and don't get me wrong, Lord of the Rings like took those base ideas and how to create a film and use practical effects, and Weta went on and created its own, like took things to a new level and came up with its own tools and its own system, like and became its own beast. But it is like comes back to Star Wars came first, Star Wars paved the way and showed it
Yeah.
could be done.
What it is it comes down to like you're brilliant with your graphic design and stuff. You're
Mm-hmm.
brilliant. If fucking Alan Turing hadn't worked out how to crack the Enigma code and like build like the first computer, guess what? What you know doesn't mean dick all
Well,
because there wouldn't
even
have been anywhere to do it.
even simpler, the things that were actually created in Star Wars and Lord of the Rings with early 3D art and modeling for CGI, I wouldn't be able to do half the graphic design stuff I do where I get to play around with Blender and do 3D stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like the tools they created open the door for a whole realm of like artistic capabilities.
Just like we say by rights, story and acting have to go to Lord of the Rings, cinematography has to go to Star Wars and George Lucas just because it's the
Yeah.
beginning of an entire dynamic shift.
Yeah.
You could go even as far to say that Avatar doesn't exist without George Lucas. At like a base level.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's nuance to it, but George
I
Lucas
get you.
started this kind of let's use computers to allow us to take these puppets and these practical ideas and make them better and bigger and brighter and everything.
Yeah.
It is time to tally up the scores.
To crown our champion.
We're going to go bottom to top this time.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So, cinematography, we agreed, goes to Star Wars.
Yep. Has to.
Acting and story go to Lord of the Rings,
Yep.
making it 2-1 Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
Rewatchability.
I think it's a tie because I said Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. How well it is aged. Star Wars,
We lent Star Wars.
which makes it 2-2. And personal relevance is a tie, I believe.
Well, here's the thing. Personal relevance, it was a tie, hard tie for me.
Oh, and I went Star Wars, so it might lean Star Wars.
So it leans Star Wars.
Making Star Wars a 3-2 winner.
Purely because I can't pick.
In your heart of hearts, you can't choose a favourite, therefore Star Wars wins.
And I'm not mad.
No, and this is the thing, I don't think we can be mad. Because
And honestly,
these are both masterpieces.
I think the fact that I'm not immediately disappointed Lord of the Rings didn't win shows that it was the right choice.
Yes.
Because, like we said with some of the points, like Star Wars did come first in it. Some of the things it did really did pave the way. And it would feel wrong.
I think it goes back to Harry Potter versus Return of the Jedi, where it was like tied, and we sat here and we're like, no, that isn't right.
Yeah.
So we like reevaluated, and we're like, okay, no, it needs to be done this way. Like you say, we're not immediately like, no, that's wrong. The wrong thing has won, which tells us that it's probably the right decision.
Yeah.
There we go, a 3-2 win for Return of the Jedi and Star Wars over Lord of the Rings and J.R.R. Tolkien.